Remembering the flood of 97.
And the Red River at the record all-time high, 39.29 feet in Fargo-Moorhead and rising.
It was the flood of the century, and KFGO was there.
City officials have now told some residents, some neighborhoods along the Red River to evacuate. The water is flooding areas that it has not flooded before. There's overland flooding threatening some parts of South Fargo.
We've already taken several calls here from people wondering because of the mad scurry and the traffic jams.
Peabody Award-winning coverage of the flood of 97.
If I can say this in support of KFGO Radio, this is what makes you guys so valuable and important, because no one can reach this large of an audience in this quick a period of time to mobilize when this kind of action needs to take place.
We were there for you then, and we are still here for you today. The Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO.
I do remember Denny Wallaker, who at that time, and he's still said to be the savior of Fargo for both 2007, 2009. He told me the story that when he came out there, he got out of his city truck, was standing in the box looking out, and he was so overwhelmed, and I almost get it myself. He said he couldn't believe the number of people that showed up, and he started crying. You know, that's the sort of thing that went on.
Their pickups just flying, just getting there. And they jump out of the car with left the doors open, their headlights on, their wipers going, and just started to run up and help the firefighters. And, you know, had that not taken place, there again, that's downtown Fargo. If that would have overtopped, it would have been, history would have been a little different.
You don't wish disasters, but sometimes I wish for the results of disasters, because when people come together kind of with that common enemy, family feuds go away, neighborhood problems go away, lines of education and income and all those strata, they just disappear, and everybody comes together in humanity.
Paul Jurgens, in 1997, I was the news director at KFGO. I think that weekend in early April, when we received the snow and the rain, and river levels began to rise quickly, you know, a week or so out, we knew that there was going to be a pending disaster here, and the people mobilized, the cities mobilized, Fargo and Moorhead, and volunteers came out, literally from around the region. I've talked in the past about schools in across North Dakota, western Minnesota, who actually dismissed their students and loaded up school buses and came to the Fargo-Moorhead area to sandbag, and that was miraculous. I mean, it was just something that we didn't think we'd see, and we certainly don't want to see that again. But right, people stepped up from everywhere.
This is Don Haney. I'm a news reporter and a journalist here at KFGO. I've been here since 1996. You know, we had the military in here. You know, parts of town were already starting to flood. I think just about every person in this building, salespeople, the announcers from the other stations, we were working 24/7. I mean, it was on, and at that time, there weren't really anybody else as far as media that were doing it live. I mean, we were the voice of Fargo-Moorhead in much of the area.
One of the eerie things was, in both events, was these flatbed trucks that were loaded with sandbags, and they were going to various neighborhoods. And it was scary, because the police would give them escorts through town, police cars, and everybody knew those trucks were coming, and they got out of the way. I mean, directing traffic, when those trucks were going through town, it was a procession.
It was nerve-wracking, because you don't know what's going to come next, and I think we were riding along fairly comfortable and confident up until that snowstorm, and that really began to wonder what's going to happen next to us. To watch people try to sandbag in a snowstorm, I mean, that's an image I won't ever forget. I mean, You got friends and neighbors and people that you know struggling with trying to do what they can during the middle of a snowstorm. Well, the residents showed their appreciation to the volunteers in marvelous ways. I mean, they just went out of their way to be thankful and to do everything they could do to help them live through this very difficult time.
In the mayor's office, and Mayor Furness wasn't in there, and I left him a note with a Bible verse on it and said, you know, hold fast, you're making the right decisions, you're doing the right thing. Okay. You know, yeah, I mean, it was the right thing, and of course, we always have faith in North Dakotans and sandbagging and all that. And that, Joel, probably was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my time in office. I had to say, we have to let it burn until that sky crane gets here. And that, I mean, to sit there and say, there's nothing we're fighting. I mean, everybody's going crazy trying to get something done, and to say, pull back, there's nothing we can do, let it burn, was awful. I mean, it was just, I mean, you can't imagine. So that was the devastation that took place, and 25 years later now, you know, there's still scars. You know, you can still, especially in people's hearts and souls.
We had, I'm going to say, 100 cassette tapes of coverage. And what we would do is we had a recorder, a radio, AM, FM, with a cassette player, and we would just, when we'd think of it, we'd pop a cassette in and start recording all hours of the day. And then when that tape was done, we'd put a little label on it, maybe with a piece of tape, and put the date. And that was about it, maybe the time. And so we had, I'm going to say 100 tapes. I was aware of the deadline, and I think I started one evening here and collected the tapes, and I put them on the floor. And then tried to just sort through them chronologically, because you wanted to put it in a chronological order. Right. And I don't know how many hours we put into preparing the entry. The entry, I think, was about an hour. And we were fortunate enough to win a Peabody that year in '98. It was at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City.
Following a winter of monumental snows, major flooding inundated the Red River Valley. KFGO radio in Fargo, North Dakota, provided comprehensive, round-the-clock coverage in this time of crisis.
New information just in from the National Weather Service. Obviously, record river levels have been exceeded.
It is a huge disaster down here. They have evacuated approximately 180 people from Breckenridge already.
They've taken one victim out. They've cut the top off the vehicle, and I still can't quite tell what kind of a vehicle it is.
Well, we're still out in the Sabin area this afternoon. About an hour ago or so, authorities performed evacuation of one farm family.
The worst of it was those trees, the stumps and trees that were floating. Oh, I was scared of them.
I have some very, very tragic news we've just received out of Lisbon, North Dakota. Boyd and listeners, an overnight fire there has taken the life of a teenage boy in Lisbon, North Dakota.
Have you made a decision yet as to whether or not we will stay on our directional signal?
We will stay exact, full power directional throughout tonight as well. This is an emergency situation, as the governor of North Dakota has called for a disaster declaration all the way to the Oval Office.
It was set in, and we were told we should, you know, people don't know what the Peabody Award is. It's a big deal. We received it, you know, it was pretty nice. I've still got my Peabody Award. I honor it. I think most of us do. Some of them have them in glass cases and that sort of thing. But, you know, we were with people from the networks, you know, and some of the TV shows and news people and that. Yeah, it was a pretty big honor.
So they sent us out to accept the award. And since we were a small market radio station, I found out shortly after I got there, and this was pretty intimidating, this great hall, that I would be the first to accept, because that was the way the categories were, you know. Sure. And you'd start with a small market radio station, and you'd build up to, you know, the networks and PBS and that type of thing. So I was, you know, I was very nervous. I think I did okay.
And here to accept the award is Paul Jurgens, News Director for KFGO Radio.
Well, first it was the movie, and then came the flood. And since I've been here the last several days, people say Fargo. That's the first thing they say is the movie. The flood, the hellacious flood that brought us here today and achieved us Peabody for KFGO, they say back home happens once every 500 years, and we thank God for that. It started with a winter of record storms and snowfall, as the video indicated, all leading to a disastrous snowmelt and flood. Entire cities were lost to the usually manageable Red River. And there was a fire that tore through the heart and soul of Grand Forks, North Dakota, as most of you will recall. Despite the destruction and despair, there was a sense of community and volunteerism that I don't think can ever be duplicated. It is with great pride that I accept this Peabody Award on behalf of KFGO. The dedication and commitment of the management and staff is worthy of this distinction. Radio is at its best in these type situations, and KFGO indeed is one of the best. The people of the Red River Valley are the true heroes. We were simply there to guide them on their nightmarish journey. Thank you very much.
And you know, it was more about the community. It wasn't so much about what we did in covering the flood.
But I think you pointed that out at the end, where we didn't do this to get a Peabody.
No,
we just did our jobs.
That's what we did, and that's what we do. And so, again, we were fortunate enough to capture a Peabody, and they're very difficult to win. They really are.